In order to create an assignment activity, the first thing you want to do in your main course page is you want to turn editing on. Once you turn editing on, you can select the topic or week, depending on your course layout, to add the activity. And to add the activity, you want to select the plus icon, add an activity or resource. You can then select the tab activities, and then you would see assignments as the second option. Select that. And then from here, we can start setting up the assignment. First thing you want to do is you want to create the assignment name. And this could be a case study assignment. In here, you can add a description. The description could be the academic policy. It could be a length of the midterm. And also you can include the structure of the case assignment or case assignment in this situation. I just copied and pasted this description here, talking about the exam or the assignment. In this case, is subject to your Q policy, academic honesty. You can also add additional files with the that contains the case study questions or midterm exam questions, for example, by selecting the file icon. You can upload a file, choose your file, and then upload this file to do that. I will not be doing that here. The availability option is very important. You want to be aware of these question mark icons that are prominent on almost all of the selections, these options here. Allow submissions from, so that means students can start submitting their papers or their submissions from that particular date. The due date is, of course, the last date in which students can submit those submissions. Then you have the cutoff date. And this cutoff date means that they no longer can make any kind of late submissions. So, for example, if I made a cutoff date of, it has to be after the due date. Let's say if I made it on the 24th, then they can submit after the due date. It will be a late submission, and you will see that it's an overdue or a late submission from the submissions window. And that's what the cutoff date does. It controls late submissions, essentially. For exams, of course, you may want to have a 5-minute leeway or 10-minute leeway after the due date, or you can just disable it completely. So that way, whenever it's due, that is the exact due date and time. So you can set the time. In this case, let's put 1 o'clock in this example. So they have more than enough time, or you can just have it restricted to the same day and just give them 1 hour, essentially. So those are the different days and times. Then you also have the remind me to grade by, and you can have this disabled because you may get some notifications that shows up on your calendar block or on the dashboard. And you can also choose to uncheck this option. And again, once you click on the question mark icon, it shows you the breakdown as to what it is. Right? So moving on to the submission types, this is also very important. You also want to have, if you want to just have file submissions, you can select file submissions. If you want them to enter in their answers in a text field, you can select this. Or if you have media collection, which is in beta right now, won't really cover this, but you also have that option to link the assignment to the media collection. So again, we won't really be covering this. Usually, best practice is usually we have students just submitting files. So you want to select the file submission. The maximum number of uploads in this case, in my case, I'll have just one upload from the student, and the maximum submission size you can do is 100. Best practice is 100 megabytes. The accepted file types, this is important too as well. It's going to be a document file. I'm going to select expand, and I'm going to choose Word document, Word 2007, and PDF. I'm going to scroll all the way down and save changes. Now, as a helpful tip, before we even started the assignment, what's recommended is you can select expand all on the top right. Expand all gives us the option to see all the different settings, so that way it's easier to navigate throughout these settings. So we spoke about the submission types. We talked about the accepted file types. We're going now on to the submission settings. As best practice, what I normally recommend is to require that students accept the submission statement, so that way that they know that the assignment or the submission document or file that they provide, it has to be original work, and they must select that checkbox before they submit it. This one could be selected as no, require students to click the submit button, because if you do select yes, if the time runs out, then it shows and they haven't saved their changes, or they did save their changes but they haven't submitted, then it's going to show as not submitted. So you'd have to change your filter to see their submission. So it will throw off the instructor. So I normally would recommend no for this, and it's default as no too as well. Attempts reopen, we recommend just leaving it as never. Group submission settings, we will talk about this in a different video, but for this video, we will select no. Notifications can get a bit annoying. So in that case, what we do recommend is just leaving it as default for no for graders. Notify the graders about submissions, no. And default settings for notify students, I recommend leaving this as no. Reason being is that once you've finished grading all student papers, you can then choose to set an announcement, announce it in class that the grades are now being available. Of course, here you have your grade section where you can select the max grade. In this case, I'm leaving it as default out of 100. And simple direct grading. Uncategorized, because I don't have any categories for this particular assignment, but if I did, then it would show up here. And this grade category is usually set up in your gradebook. Grade to pass, I'm just leaving it blank, but you can select 50 if you wish. Blind marking, so this is important to check this out. Usually we leave the default as pretty much no, but if you have TAs, it might be useful to you. Blind marking means that it hides the identity of the students from the markers. So it prevents any kind of bias in terms of when they are grading. And once the blind marking setting would be locked once any submission is made. So that's also something to be aware of. Once submissions are made, some of these settings will be locked. Once students start submitting their files and so on, some of these settings will no longer be able, it will no longer give you the option to change it. You can also hide the grader identity from the students. So that way students don't know who is marking their papers, and the markers don't know whose paper they're marking. You have the option to control that using that here. Using marking workflow, we normally just recommend no. This adds more complexity to your marking. And what you can do to control, because the workflow controls when all the grades are submitted at once to the students, and you have multiple rounds of marking. But what we do recommend is you can hide the assignment in the gradebook, so that way the grades are hidden, and you can also hide the assignment in the course main page. So that way they would not see it. You would just let them know that the assignments will be hidden from their view. And once grades are completed, once the grading process has been completed, it will be shown to them. As simple as that. Common module settings, if it's something that is due in the future, you can hide from the students immediately. So that way, once it comes closer to the actual date where the submissions are required, you can then show it on the course page. So for now, I'm going to hide from students. There's no groups in my particular class. I'm just going to select no groups. And then we can talk about the group mode in different tutorials. Restricting access. This will be restricting for accommodated students or deferred students. You can set or add a restriction, and you can set that restriction by group in that case for accommodated student group. And then activity completion, we'll just leave it as default, and you are all set. You can just save and display. And now you have the submissions window. You would see that you have 6 students in the class. No students have submitted. And of course, there's no grading required right now because there's no submissions. And of course, the due date and the time remaining. Then once students start submitting, you can select view all submissions, and then you should see them in this window. An example of that would be if I were to go to one of my assignments that has been already pre-configured and some students have already submitted, you can select view all submissions, and then you will see the student submissions, and you can start grading. Notice that if you have in your assignment selected a reminder to grade by, in this case I have it disabled, but if you did have it enabled, if you have a calendar block in your class, you would see the days highlighted with which indicates when you should be grading or when the assignment should be graded. Then also in your dashboard, if you go to the main dashboard, you can see here under your upcoming events, it also shows here too as well to be graded.